Hey, I'm Doug, and welcome to Worship Guitar Show number 34. So glad you could join us. Tonight we are talking about one of my favorite subjects, teamwork. Teamwork is just one of those things that requires teams and work. And one of the amazing experiences I had this past week is I got a chance to fly through the air in an airplane filled with people and managed to not catch COVID because I was very careful with said mask and kept earbuds in my ears and glasses over my eyes, and got a chance to hang out with the team at Church of the Highlands as they filmed their Christmas celebration with a 50-piece orchestra. 50-piece orchestra. I don't even quite know how to imagine putting something like that together, but at the same time, it was really an amazing event. And in case you don't know, and my guess is that you do, Church of the Highlands is where this amazing program Growth Track comes from. And my guess is a number of your churches are using the Growth Track as a vehicle for raising up teams, raising up team members, and as my wife Melissa always likes to say, finding a need with your name on it. And, you know, the great thing about church is there's always a need, but the thing that's especially great about it is God uses our gifts to help us serve the church, build the house, have a heart for the house, and grow the house through our giftings. And that's one of the great things that Growth Track does really, really, really well. And I got a chance to hang out with some of the amazing members of that team and got a chance to watch firsthand kind of what they do and how they do it. And it was amazing. So they are, like all of us, just going from point A to point B. So one of the things we're going to be talking about tonight is just some of the ways that we can really, as we look at our teams, how we can actually take some practical steps to get better at what we do. So this is the thing. As guitar players, you know, I've played on teams with other guitar players, and, you know, what I want to make sure I don't do is jump on my, you know, pedestal and go, "Thou shalt memorize every chart you've ever been given." But if we're going to be really serious about all of this stuff and really make sure that we can bring our best, ideally we should know the material. And here's the thing. I've seen enough worship leaders face buried in the iPad that they really are missing the room. And if we're ultimately going to lead a room in worship, I would go so far as to say, without getting up on said pedestal, it's really hard to lead somebody someplace that you haven't been yourself in that worship experience. And one of my favorite things about this room is this is, you know, kind of one of the places that, it's actually my main place where I come to rehearse when I'm rostered. And I will sit with the music for a period of time until I really, first of all, have a feel for kind of the dynamics of the song, but also for kind of where I'm going to go within the framework of that. And there are numerous nuances to that, but most importantly, it's just kind of like, hey, look, you know, if one of the things I've talked about before, on a purely guitar basis, let's reduce it there and start off there, since this is the Worship Guitar Show, is the idea of like, hey, let's map the dynamics from 1 to 10. Even if we do it in our head, where are the dynamics as the song moves from front to back? And if you have that sense as you're rehearsing the parts, chances are your parts are going to reflect that kind of growing envelope as the dynamics raise, and that smaller envelope as they come down. And what that means is, in theory, that is in response to what's happening to the dynamics in the track. That is to say that we're rehearsing with, unless we're rehearsing with a chart. So the idea is then we bring that, first of all, hopefully to a midweek rehearsal when midweek rehearsals actually exist. And in turn, we also bring that to our Sunday morning run through, not to be confused with a rehearsal, but run through. All right, only slightly on the pedestal there. But the idea is that we want to show up on Sunday. That shouldn't be our rehearsal time. That's our run through time. And again, why? Great question. Why is that? Why? Because ultimately, there's one person, generally speaking, for each song that we're needing to just basically create this platform for, and that's the worship leader. So if we're fumbling our way through the chart, And I've been there, so let me be raise my hand and say I've done it. When either I got confused, B, I didn't practice or study hard enough, and C, I just blew it, which happens, of course. But the worship leader, you can tell they're like, you're not giving me much to work with, folks, and it makes their job that much harder. And ultimately, we kind of want to be, raising them up so they can just kind of take that, because it's an interesting thing. It's quote unquote just a piece of music until we put our hearts into it, and until we bring it as an offering. Then all of a sudden it becomes something of worship, right? I mean, otherwise it's just something we could just be playing on iTunes. But when you hear the intent of upward worship, when you hear the intent of outward outreach to people that need a touch of something, that is when that becomes there's sacrifice, there's gift, there is all this stuff that begins to magnify something that's just a piece of music with maybe 4 chords, 5 if we're lucky, right? So the idea is that preparation is really important. So practically speaking, again, dynamic numbers, if you can just kind of go, maybe if you got a chart in front of you, just kind of go, all right, there's the form, and then dot some numbers across that, so you can just kind of keep that in mind. It really, really helps to be able to do that. The other thing is that just for the sake of conversation, and I probably could do this. First of all, hello. I don't read music. I have to know the inside out in order to lead. I love this, Alan. Come on. All right. First of all, let me just take a quick moment before I go any further, and let me say hello to everybody. Alan, hello. David, hello. I'm not going to salute everybody. Keep rolling. I love it. Thank you. Good quote. Need to find finding a need with your name on it. Isn't that lovely, Bruce? That's totally a Mel thing. Fishman guitar. I love that. I agree. There we go. Most mistyped those. Sorry, I agree mostly. But as long as leaders are giving the music enough time, absolutely. I don't read music. This is Alan. I have to know it inside and out in order to lead. If I'm stressing the arrangement because I didn't learn it, then I'm not worshiping. And here's the thing: it's like we're not here to spank people, right? But what we are here to do is just kind of go. You know what? We want to bring a pleasing offering. And again, we want to, as worship guitar players, serve that worship leader so they're able to just kind of have this platform such that they can do their thing. Because if we're not doing our thing, it's kind of like a flat tire. Okay, Fishman, how do you feel about playing the parts as closely as you can or making it all your own? I like to stick with hooks as much as I can. I don't typically reinvent the song much. That's a great question. Okay. So let me pause that thought for a quick second. Once we've kind of got the idea of kind of, all right, here's the chord thing, here's where the form is going. Usually, as I start to play along, I start to kind of craft the blend between the 5 guitar parts or so. For some reason, I've decided every worship song has 5 guitar parts that are layered together, and I have to figure out how to kind of make them sound like one. Right? Most of the time, most of us are rostered as a single guitar player. Somehow we got to pull this together. So again, my favorite example, I'm sorry if it gets old, but I was listening to it the other day on the plane ride coming back from Alabama. Salvation Is Here, and listening to Lincoln Brewster's version. I love the bridge in that, talking about making it your own. Brilliant bridge. Boy, is Lincoln hot. So the thing is that as I was, kind of listening to that melody, the fanfare, right? People want to recognize that. And that's the sort of thing that's kind of like, I was listening to some song, I'm going to call out Adam Duritz of Counting Crows. I was listening to him sing like one of their big songs, like, Mr. Jones, and he was totally like reinventing the melody. I'm like, give me the melody. Like, I tuned into your live performance to hear you sing the song, and you're not giving me the expected thing, right? It's just like there is a certain amount. Now I'm going somewhere with this, where certain parts of the song, they just want to hear the song. So give them what they want instead of like distracting them, right? So, signature parts like the Salvation Is Here. But then there's other stuff that's like, hey, you can't play 5 parts at the same time. So you got to figure out if there's one of them or some way of just kind of going, okay, well, what is it? The interesting thing is a lot of worship guitar players hang out in the middle or at the top of the neck, which means nobody's ever hitting the big chords with the exception of the acoustic guitar player, and usually they're capoed halfway up the neck anyway so they can play a G chord, if you know what I'm saying. Did I go there? I did. So the point being is that is to say, all right, hold on, let's actually call a spade a spade. Acoustic guitar, two approaches. There is nothing wrong with using a capo because there is a lot to be said about the sound of a capoed G chord for whatever key you're going to move into. But that is different than knowing the chords in different keys, in different fingerings, up and down the neck, so you have the full register of the instrument. And the thing about, playing with half the guitar neck, you did pay for the whole thing. You might as well use it. I'm saying. But the idea is there's all this sound. The guitar at the bottom of the neck is a gorgeous instrument. So let's not confuse not taking the time to master your instruments and the benefits of capoing, because they're two separate deals. Let's just call it out like it is. And the overlay of the two, that is to say, capoing when you want to and knowing how to use the entire range of the instrument, that is golden. Nothing wrong with capo. No capo shaming here. But at the same time, when the capo becomes a crutch, then it's a crutch. We don't want to have our music be a crutch, right? I don't think God wants our offering to be a crutch. I think he wants to see us kind of run forward with that thing. Okay, parts. So signature parts, I think they're worth grabbing. Salvation is here. Again, you've probably heard me blab about this a bunch of times. It's a guy key, originally. You move it up to a girl key, all of a sudden you're way up at the top of the neck. Great time to add an octave down in your effects arsenal. So the idea is, otherwise, if you bring some of those lines up, up a fourth or up a fifth, you're like, woo, it's a little piercy. So that's why I always like to use an octave. Okay. So again, how do you feel about playing the parts as closely as you can, making it all your own? Okay. So here is again the nuance of this. Somewhere between the original recording and your ensemble, there's a difference. Let's use Hillsong again as our example, and then there's your team and my team. My team and your team do not sound like Michael Guy Chislett produced Brooke Ligertwood led worship. And that's good. We want difference. So it means that as we find that arrangement, we need to figure out, do we need some big chords at the bottom of the neck? Or does it really want everybody capoed up and let the bass cover it? Maybe, at that point, bass player plays the 5 string. But there's a thought. So this gets us to this next piece of this, is the teamwork. And I'm going to come back. Tom Cameron, salute to you, my dear friend. Good to see you. All right, so let me just, weird key, okay, hang on. Let me come back to all this great feedback, but let me just talk about the teamwork part of this thing. So I realize people are busy, but sometimes what you can do is quarterly and arguably monthly sectionals where the vocalists go off, everybody learns their parts, they sing the melodies, and they split into sections, they gather around, post-COVID, around the piano, your sopranos, tenors, and altos, and you split it. Actually, I think you split it opposite. Sopranos, tenors, and altos around the piano. I've forgotten. But the point being, as you're noodling on the piano, you're broken across into section. Everybody initially sings the melody, so they're familiar with the melody, and then you break into parts. And ideally what happens, there's a section lead that maybe you start with each of those section leads. They harmonize, everybody sings together, and maybe the section lead goes off and teaches everybody the parts, either with a keyboard or with a track or an acoustic guitar or something. So people learn how to hear where their part is. Then they come back together as a sectional. The band's rehearsing. Maybe there's, a first, second, and third drummer. You're rotating people in. You're showing them how to bring the dynamics up. We're talking about this marking the dynamics on a scale of 1 to 10. Hey, the intro, we're going to play it as an 8. Then we bring it down to a 5 for the first verse. And then we cycle people through, so on and so forth. Then we bring the entire team together, and then we just practice actually running the song. So we actually kind of go, hey, let's feel this where the song is, as opposed to a bunch of kind of strangers showing up on a Sunday morning and go, hey, let's do a run through. Who are you? As opposed to, hey, let's do a run through. Oh, that's right. We rehearsed this song. We workshopped this song. And trust me, the teams that we want to emulate, workshop songs. Workshopping is all about working, workshopping. I'm not talking about working people to the bone. That's not what I mean at all. That's not the heart of it. The idea, though, is when we actually put a little bit of muscle into it, we get the results, right? There's this Kaiser commercial. I think it's like 1, 2 or something. It's like, all right, I've done my repetition. I'm like, if you want great results, we definitely want to work a little bit. I'm not talking about killing people. That's not my heart here. Hear me, folks. It's just a matter of like, how do we actually take where we are and get someplace better, over the course of the next 12 months. And those quarterly and arguably monthly sectionals, if you can do it, but on at least a quarterly basis. So sectionals allow you to kind of separate everybody out and then bring everybody together, and kind of, it's also a great opportunity to on-ramp new songs. It's also a great opportunity to have everybody go, hey, we're doing on such and such a date 3 new songs. I need everybody to show up when we get to that date knowing those 3 songs. It kind of begins to let you know who's serious and who's not, because you give people lead time. And what's great about this is it also is a great way to load balance adding new material. All right, let me just take a moment because I've hung out in YouTube for just a moment. So let me jump over to Facebook. Look what it is. It's Jem. Hello, Jem. Nice to see you, my friend. Lincoln is ridiculous. Chris, hello. My general thought is, if there's a part that is very key to the song, I will learn that. But other than that, work on my own thing that fits the song. Hello, John Deacon. Good to see you. Man of many winning pedals. Hello. All right, awesome. Okay, first of all, if you think I'm a hard nose, say so. But, here's the thing is that the idea is that we want to bring our best and make it a pleasing offering. Jem, I love it. Great to see you. Everybody, thank you. All right, digging into the tube of you. All right, got to play the hook and hold down the rhythm. Absolutely. Oh, yeah, nice shirt. Thank you very much. Okay, Matthew Winter, Alan, hello. Look at you guys saying hello. Bob, what's going on? How are people killed? Laugh out loud. Yes, rhetorical. We don't want to kill people. We can slay them in the spirit. That's how they're killed. But we don't want them. Yeah. All right. So the sectionals are a great way to get there. Now, the other thing is that tops and tails. So this is a big thing that, first of all, it prevents most of the train wrecks. Most train wrecks happen when we transition from song number whatever into song number whatever, and somebody hits the wrong button on the click or on the tracks, or plays the wrong chord, or capos at the wrong thing. So the idea of taking the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, click, song 1. Sorry, song 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3, 4. 4, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Preceding song. 1, 2, 3. So you basically take 4 measures of each song, and then you kind of have your whatever it is that you do that's kind of the ending piece that connects them. You put that in there, and then the click launches off, and you take 4 measures of each of those songs, and it's tops. It's actually tails and tops, but we call it tops and tails. So the idea is you take the last little bit of one song and the first little bit of the other song, and you just loop that whole thing sequentially. And what's neat about that is it makes it such that all those things happen. The other thing that you can do for your worship leaders is, if one of those songs, for example, I don't know, maybe you come out. Honestly, the first song is usually, hey, good morning, how's everybody doing, blah, blah, blah. But let's just imagine, you get to song 3, and you bring things down. So you finish song 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Click, 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 measure 1, measure 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4. 4, 2, 3, 4. I was in the Word, blah blah blah. I was meditating on the scripture, and I really felt that God was speaking to me a word about this day. Somebody in the house I'm not a worship leader, but you get the point. And then, the idea is I'm not a big fan of scripting that stuff, but I am a big fan of the fact that, um, showing up prepared, knowing what you're going to bring, unless your gifting is you just pull it down out of the air and you're like, Psalm, whatever, and you roll. Some people, that's their thing. Like, just go for it, right? It's kind of like freeform rapping. If you own it, right? Not necessarily freeform rapping on Sunday morning. Don't get me wrong. But the point being is that if you have the gift to read the room, so this again gets us back to this preparation thing, such that when you know that the transition is going to be smooth, and when you come to, for example, song 3 and it comes down, and everybody's playing the right chord on the right downbeat in the right key, atmosphere. Okay, so the funny thing is that it's going to sound strange when I say this, but the number one reason we're looking for this preparedness and the teamwork is atmosphere. Not that we want to quote unquote manufacture atmosphere, because we can kind of do that, right? You know what I mean, right? But I'm talking about investing into you. For example, you could go to the local orchard supply store, and at the right time of year you could buy a bunch of cherries on the vine and all the fruit already on the tree. But that's different than getting out there and tilling the soil, planting those little saplings and watching them grow and watering them, because when that fruit, operative word fruit, comes, that harvest, you're like, you know what, we worked for that. There is a different cost that comes with that. And the neat thing is that worship that comes at a cost, I think God honors that. I'm not saying that, if you don't rehearse, God's not going to show up. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that when we sacrifice a little something, we march up that hill ready to throw something in the fire, something that means something in the fire. God honors that, because he goes, you know what? I think he again, it's the parable of the talents. He doesn't want us to just sit there with it. It's in the Bible. Sorry, don't argue with me about it. I'm just wanting to inspire you to kind of hopefully maybe go back to your team and go, what are some small changes that we could do in the way we work as a team to do this? And again, getting back to this experience with Church of the Highlands, I was just like, these guys are all about equipping teams with systems to equip teams. And to watch them, with a 50-piece orchestra, my buddy Chris there, kind of the shot caller, I had a chance to put on a particular mix, so I could hear what he was, calling out to the orchestra. I could hear what he was calling out to the Pro Tools team, the click team, the lighting team, the video team, and I'm just like, wow, the layers of organization, that takes work. It doesn't come without a cost, but when we're prepared, we have the greater opportunity to, it's kind of like taking a breath before you're going to blow up a balloon. You got to take the breath. All right, let me just jump in real quick with some more comments here. Forrest, hello. Good to see you. So, all right, this is going to be fun tonight. I'm the only electric guitarist. Okay, I love the challenge of working out parts with another guitarist. It's absolutely adorable to that interaction. So I got a chance. Chris Griffin is the worship creative director at Church of the Highlands, and we had this amazing experience after this long day, and we ended up in his office, and he pulls down this beautiful custom shop telly and this beautiful ES, and he and I sat there and jammed for about 20 minutes. It was a very interesting thing, because as we played together, two things became really apparent. First of all, the guy is scary good. Second of all, and I guess that means there are three things, as we played, I could hear that both of us were used to listening for the click, because we would kind of dance around this thing, finding the time, and that third thing was listening to each other. It was really interesting to listen to a player that listened as intently to me as I listened to them. That is such a rewarding experience, and there's a difference between when you're buried in the chart and your ability to listen and not. It's one of the reasons why it's so valuable to record a service and listen back. Most of the time, I'm just horrified at my own playing. I'm just like, oh, You think it's this great thing, and you listen back like, miss that cue, miss that cue. That was out of time. The dynamics weren't good. It's not about pulling yourself down. It's a matter of just kind of going, let's have a reality check. Ooh, and it's confronting. But if we don't confront ourselves with reality, then we're living somewhere la la land. So the idea of working with a second guitar player, and Jeffrey B. Scott had this whole thing where in one of the columns in Worship Musician, he was talking about who's going to play which guitar. I'm going to play the Tele, you're going to play the Les Paul, so on and so forth. Choosing who's going to play what, such that when you put the two sounds together, they work well together. That is a really fundamental thing. It actually means that there's communication happening. And the idea is, oh, I'm going to play up top, you're going to play down at the bottom. For example, Hosanna. You can't both play the part at the top there, right? So the idea of who's playing what and then creating the right level of decoration, who's just kind of playing the big chords down below, which is one of my favorite things, which is, doesn't happen a lot in worship, and I wish it happened more. That bottom of the neck stuff, when you hit that girth, and I love that. So, yes, it is great to work out parts with another guitar player. Let's take a similar question, but now with tones. How do you work to get close to the original tone or your own? It's a great question. The challenge, the interesting thing is I've been having this whole internal conversation. My general worship sound is not laden in a ton of. Hang on a second. Is that up over here in? Which one is up over here? Hang on a second. There's the plate. I'm down with the plate. So the glitz, yeah. So the glitz, like I'm down with it. I think it sounds really cool, but actually I think it sounds awesome. But I hear 20 guitar players on 20 YouTube channels using the same sound, and I'm like, it totally works. It's totally the genre. I totally get it. But there are times that I'm kind of like, when I go for my thing, there may be a little bit of plate, there may be a little bit of spring, but generally I'm just kind of my dotted eighth and my quarter note, because I find that people hear the guitar and not the reverb. Now, let me be really clear. That's a me thing, and that's not well, they should be doing that, and they shouldn't be using, blah, blah, blah. I actually listen to it and I go, it sounds great. It sounds like the recording. It sounds like all of these things. And and idiomatically, it's really cool. The interesting thing is that I find when you kind of put your own fingerprints on it, presuming it sounds good, it has the opportunity to feel a little bit more organic. But that, again, is me. So let me be really clear. If you are grabbing, and let me be really clear again when I say Worship Tutorials presets, who were phenomenal, what they've done is they've given everybody an on-ramp to worship. I cannot applaud what they've done more. So long as we also go, well, are there other sounds out there that we can endeavor to find? Sometimes that means, well, what happens when we turn the reverb off? And my personal sound in worship is actually generally probably the reverb off and a dotted eighth and a quarter note. The reason for that being is by the time you end up in a room, a cavernous space, you don't necessarily need more reverb. You're missing the transients, so the more you mask those transients in what I call the cloud, the more they become hard to hear. Now, that said, if the sound and the vibe is the cloud and you're going for that, and especially if there's somebody that's got some articulation with something like a Gretsch, where it's doing that, now we have that counterpoint, right? It's just something to think about. So let me be really clear. I'm not being snotty about that. It's kind of like when everybody went out and bought a Big Sky and a Timeline. Everybody sounded like a Big Sky and a Timeline. They didn't sound like themselves as much as, I got to say it, as they had a tendency to sound like the technology. We want to develop the craft, not just the technology, to take it to the next place in our congregations. So if the sound that you're just going for, you're like, you know what, Doug, just shut up. I love that sound. Give me all that modulated reverb and sit down and shut up because that's what I love. I love it. Like, for me, that's my thing. If that's for you, your thing, awesome. And, there's nothing like hearing a sound and going, like for me, like Stevie Ray. I hear Stevie Ray and I'm like, I just want to sound like that. So I gather the tools that, are necessary and I kind of attempt to so endeavor. Jimi Hendrix, so endeavor. Brian May, so endeavor. Jeffrey Cunday, Saint Pope, Michael Guy Chislett, Droth. But at the same time, I also kind of go, all that stuff sometimes without the width of sound in a team sometimes it can be a little much. That's all. So I hope I made that clear because it didn't feel very clear, but I'm going to live with it. When the keyboardist accidentally plays the drum track, oops. And it happens. Okay, hang on a second. There we go. So, and the leader on acoustic forgets to change his capo. Yeah, it happens. It's awkward. And it does happen. That's why the tops and tails are so good because you've practiced that transition, right? I used to bring a little card with me. This will work. And I would have just little notes just such that and you could put it in your phone, but I just had a little card that I would put in my back pocket that before the run-through started, I just kind of looked through things, so I just had a little bit of a reminder, just such that it wasn't me that kind of started the song in particular key. Because again, one of the things when I was leading a team, and I don't mean singing, you don't want to hear that, that does deserve a lot of reverb, was that, I would basically create a grid. I'd find the singer's lowest and highest note, and I would look at the arrangement and generally see what the lowest and highest notes. And I usually then had a pretty good idea of what key that vocalist was going to sing in. I'd send them the track. I'd say, what key do you want to sing it in? And then that would get burned into, quote unquote, if you will, into PCO. So it's that way when I rostered that song with that worship leader, that chart automatically got associated in that correct key. Such that, from a very organizational point, everybody knew, once we knew in advance which worship leader was singing and which songs we were doing 1 month in advance, people knew what to expect. 50% of the people were actually ahead of the curve and paid attention to that. But 100% of the people knew the expectation was that if I'm going to take the time in advance, I want you paying attention. Because that was what we did. All right, let's see here. Also, Alan, I used to enjoy when we have two players. Our worship leader puts in planning center who is leading, who is written. Love that. The problem is the other guy doesn't always learn his half. So I'm a practicer, so it's hard for me. So, that's an interesting thing. I think, Matthew, one of the ways you can do that is and this post-COVID is the coffee date, right? Sometimes one is that I find that, the longer I do this thing, the more I forget that you never know what's going on with somebody in their private life, So there was a guy at on one of the teams that I played on that just never got it together to bother practicing. And honestly, I'm just like, why do you it's just every week just didn't know the songs, didn't know the arrangements, even when it was kind of clear we need you to know the song. Oh yeah, I'm gonna do it, and just never did it. And so I never bothered to go to coffee with him, which I should have. But if I had, I probably would have found out a little bit more about the why behind the what. And until we find out a little bit more about the why behind the what, sometimes we miss it, right? And we don't want to miss people because honestly, people are more important than the worship, but the worship does matter. And yes, that is frustrating. If one half isn't prepared, it makes both halves weaker. So I've had that problem. Toes need to be open. I think if you aren't aping them identically, less is more. Yeah, I love spread chords, absolutely. So what we're not going to do that this time, but one of the things we're going to be doing, of a number of things, and I'm actually not going to burst the bubble, is I will burst the bubble. I think on a semi-regular basis, we're going to take some simple chord progressions and we're going to analyze them and talk about the diatonic numbers. And we're going to talk about some ways that we can kind of develop our ear and our ear training. Because this is one of the things, this is the challenging part. There's the stuff that teams should be doing. And then there's the stuff that teams should be kind of, if you will, asking or assigning their players to go out and do on their own. And then it's a matter of finding the resources to do that. And honestly, there's not a lot of great ear training for worship resources out there. Gosh, I'm just going to go there. Wesley, what's going on, my man? At Highlands, we found we tend to like more lead guitar parts in a mix rather than big chords. Chords tend to get lost in our mixes, especially when you have keypads and tracks in that range. Absolutely. So, well put. Good to see you, Wesley. Long time. We were just talking about you guys. So, by the way, I snapped a photo of your board. Nice board. But I didn't take your Klon, I promise. It's still there. So here's the thing, and to Wesley's point, is that if you have, and this is especially the case at larger churches, where you've got a lot of stuff going on in the tracks, where you have a lot of keys going on, you don't want to be creating mud down below there. The challenge is that when and Wesley, this is not in any way being combative, so please be clear about that. Your average church, let's see if I can say this without sounding like an idiot, quite often features a person that learned to play piano, and the church was like, we need a keyboardist, and so some poor piano person raised their hand and they're like, I'll do it, and all of a sudden they're like, that's awesome. Do you know main stage? And they're like, I know where the stage is. And they're like, no, main stage. And they're like, no. Well, do you have a laptop? And you're like, yeah. Awesome. We'll see you on Sunday. And so all of a sudden, they're confronted with technology. And quite often what they do is they have a tendency to go for more piano, strings, sounds, as opposed to the bigger kind of sounds. And eventually they may or may not end up getting tracks. That is to say, at smaller churches, especially in a setup teardown situation, you may not have the ability to roll out the technology to get the ears up and running, which means you're kind of with fallback monitors. There's not a system set up for click, blah, 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 blah. That is to say, in that case, you're dealing with a smaller keyboard sound, which is where the bigness actually comes from. Some of those lower lower chords. But Wesley, you're precisely correct. There are times that's only going to create noise. All right, let's see here. Hey, Rick Costa, what's going on, my friend? All right, so let me see. If one hasn't been prepared, tones need to be appropriate, and that's it. Less is more. I love spread chords. So spread chords, that's what got me going talking about this ear training. So let me talk about this. So basically, if I were to, I'm just going to do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 1, 3, 5. 1 flat 3 5, 1 flat 3 5, 1 3 5, 1 3 5, 1 flat 3 5, 1 flat 3 flat 5, 1 3 5. Those are the chord tones for the diatonic triads, going major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, and major for some key. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 1, 1 3 5. And then I went up to this note up to this note, which is the 2. Then I went up to the 3, and then I went basically the 1 flat 3 5 off the 3 chord, then back to the 2 chord to the 1 chord. So basically, there I was singing the bass notes of 1 3 2 4 da 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 1 chord, 3 chord, 2 chord, 4 chord, and when I'm at the 1 chord I can da 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 yeah, that's a 4, not the 5. So the point being is being able to hear the bass note movement of the chords, and then in turn being able to know which chord tones go along with that bass note. And basically what you're doing is you're taking the major scale and you're picking one of those notes as your bass note, and then basically on that bass note you start there, you skip a tone, and you skip another tone, and that's where most of the chords come from. And that's basically taking the first, third, and fifth tone, starting off of each of the 7 tones of the major scale. And so you got your 1 chord. My strange humming there was the 1 chord, 3 chord, 2 chord, and 4 chord. After a while, you begin to realize that worship doesn't use a lot of huge amount of variations as they're constructing the chord progression. So after a while, you become really familiar with recognizing, oh, that's the sound of the 1 chord to the 4 chord. And so after a while, you kind of begin to go, oh, this is what's happening here. So one of the things that we're going to do here, because it doesn't happen in a lot of churches, is actually do some chord analysis where we take some existing chord progressions and go, here's the bass note movement, here's the key, and these are the numbers, so you can begin to associate numbers with them. And here's the thing: I'm sure there are a bunch of you that are already doing this, but the thing is that there aren't enough doing this. So we want to speak to that, and I may or may not be able to inspire you to do something that maybe a little differently than the way you're doing it, or just to reaffirm just what it is that you're already doing. So with that said, okay, Rick Costa, hello, my friend. All right, that's why I asked, because of your background and style. Hang on, let me back up a second here. Okay, so that's a great question. So backing up there, um, I think ultimately, if Stevie Ray Vaughan had showed up on a Sunday to play at your church, he would have found a way to fit in the mix, but still brought some Stevie, right? I would love to see worship guitar players finding out more about who they are in the midst of the textures, figuring out how they can pour more of themselves in. And I think, honestly, it can be intimidating. Sometimes it's easier to just kind of learn the parts and play the parts. There's nothing wrong with that. But I also want to encourage people to just kind of go, you know what? What does more look like? How do I find those notes that are next door? And that's kind of getting back to this ear training thing. Once you know what the 1, 3, and 5 actually is, say for example, for the key of G, G, B, D, A, C, E, B, D, F sharp, C, E, G, D, F sharp, A, E, G, B, F sharp, A, C, G, B, D. And then instead of going G, B, D, you can go G, B, E, which is the 1, 3, and the 6. And you can go G, B, D, G, B, E, G, B, D, G, B, E. And then you go up to the 3 chord. B, D, F sharp, B, D, G, B, D, F sharp, B, D, G. Go down to the 2 chord, A, C, E, A, C, F sharp, A, C, E, A, C, F sharp. Go up to the 4 chord, C, E, G, C, E, A, C, E, G, C, E, A. And basically we're going 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 6, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 6 off of each of those bass notes, if you will. And it's taking what we know about the bass note movement and allowing us to apply some melodic structure around it. I say that because that's kind of what piano players are kind of doing, is they're moving to certain chords and they're adding decoration. The thing about knowing which notes to go to is one of the things that most guitar players have a really hard time with, because they just don't know the notes. It's not that complicated once you kind of go, if I can count to 7, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. So the 1 chord starts at G, the 3 chord starts at G, A, B, the 2 chord starts at G, A, and the 4 chord starts at G, A, B, C. Oh, G is the 1, B is the 3, A is the 2, and C is the 4. I got this. And then you begin to go, okay, well that G's got a G, B, D, and the A's got a A, C, E. I should say G, B, D, B, D, F sharp, A, C, E, C, E, G. You begin to just kind of be able to go, oh, okay, I see what that is. That is to say, if I have the first 5 notes of the key of G major, G, A, B, C, D, G, B, D, it's basically the 1, 3, 5. Then if I jump up from, instead of starting at the G, not the A, but at the B, then I go B, D, F sharp. Then I start off the A, C, E, and then I start off the C, E, G. G, B, D, B, D, F sharp, A, C, E, C, E, G. You just kind of basically are taking every other, no, let's see if I can do this without offending anybody. G, B, D, then we start off of the B note, B, D, F sharp. We start off the A note, A, C, E, and then we start off the C note, C, E, G. So the idea is once you know what those 3 chord tones are, which is the vast majority, that's basically the 1, 3, 5 or the 1 flat 3, 5 the majority of the time. It's just the chord tones that you're going to be playing that you kind of stack those tones. Then you start adding those neighbor notes, which if you know the notes of the parent major scale, then you know what those neighbor notes are. And that's where the flavor comes from. And then the trick is to hear, do those neighbor notes support or conflict with what's happening with the melody? And this is where owning this stuff and having a knowledge about this stuff becomes really valuable in terms of supporting the worship leader. Because on the times that I really will sit there and hear where the melody is and start working with stuff like Wesley was talking about, you're kind of in here, in kind of the 8th fret-ish, you're kind of working on these different voicings, or somewhere between the 3rd and the 8th fret, up to the 10th. You're kind of finding these little voicings, and then you're playing with the surrounding notes to create support for the melody notes, and you're creating these movements. And it's one of my favorite things when you can always tell the worship leader kind of turns around with this little smile, and it's a very unique smile because they're like, it says about 5 things simultaneously. They're like, you're actually listening to what I'm singing. You actually aren't just kind of playing notes that coincidentally happen to line up with what I'm doing. This is actually something that was very intentional. And you took the time before you showed up on Sunday to prepare that. And I'm kind of in shock, and they kind of turn around with this particular look, and it is the most satisfying experience because they kind of turn around and you're like, I got your back. And then they are off because the thing is this, is that the other analogy about signature parts is that traditionally, especially on smaller teams, one of the things that I always try and do is like, I know there's a 50% probability with whatever keyboardist person that just came up playing piano. They're like, hey, you're going to play main stage. And they're like, huh? That they may not have that signature keyboard line that, so-and-so at Hillsong or Church of the Highlands played. My job is to show up with that thing in my back pocket ready to play it, even if it's not a guitar line. Such that I'm like, I got it. And the worship leader then uses that as a cue from when they're going to come in, knowing when it plays. Because again, you come back to the top of the verse, that signature part happens once, twice, or 4 times, then the vocal thing sets up. If nobody knows what that signature line is, then the top of the verse comes around, after the chorus, and the little signature line's supposed to play. It's like, will we do 2 cycles? Do we do 4 cycles? I don't know. And then what happens is the band starts to get, it's like earthquakes are when they are shifting plates of land and they get offset. You don't want that happening underneath your worship leader. All right, I love spread chords. So spread chords are, instead of going 1, 3, 5, 1, 5, 3, and that's kind of an Eric 1, 3, 3. Yeah, that's 1, 5. So that's kind of the Eric Johnson deal. What's neat about them is they just give you this lovely. I'm not set up, but I'm in the midst of some mad video that I'm working on that will produce loud, angry noises if I'm not careful. So the idea is those chords, though, there's space between the different notes in the voicing, and they are lovely, and they create this anthematic approach to guitar. All right, let me jump over to the Facebook for just a moment. Oh, hey. All right, first of all, John, truth speaking, more musicians need to hear each other. Thank you. Awesome. Good to see you again, by the way. Shane, Gear Whisperer, my dear friend. Brett, hello. Brett, sorry I'm late tonight. Do not ever apologize for being late. I'm always so grateful that you're here. Thank you for coming. With great pleasure. Shane, time for some diatonic theory and harmony. You got it, my friend. Steve Lawrence, I missed the topic. Are we talking about playing? So, back up. Steve Lawrence, hello. Sorry, I missed the topic. Are we talking about playing with our skill versus playing with no flair? No, sorry. So we are talking about, that's a good point. I need to probably have some little bug that sits down below. Note to self, thank you. So we are talking about kind of the different flavors of teamwork. As a brief recap, one of the things we talked about was as you're rehearsing on your own, 1 to 10, marking the dynamics either mentally of the progression, if you will, the song that, as it goes through, or on the chart itself, so you can kind of have this peaks and valleys, right? Because we're always looking for the peaks and valleys, knowing the parts. Then when the idea is, in theory, every quarter, maybe even every once a month, the team gets together. The vocalists split out into a sectional. They gather around the piano. There's usually a section lead. They sing the harmonies. Everybody else kind of follows them. Then they go off into their own little rooms. Then they come back. Then the band gets together, so on and so forth. Then on Sundays, we do these tops and tails. We play, if you will, the last 4 measures or the last 1 measure if you're in a hurry. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ba da da da. Da 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 da. da. So you just are taking that little transition between each song. It is a lifesaver. That capo, oops, hit the wrong fret. That usually gets rid of that stuff out of there. And most of the time, the mistakes that are here's the great thing about mistakes is they almost are always repeated. Like if you think about the mistakes that you make, it's almost always a repeated set of things as opposed to the new, oh, I've never done that one before. Those happen. But if you begin to kind of go, most of the mistakes I make, I'm going to make either again if I don't practice them out, or I'm going to make because I didn't practice enough to eliminate them. But usually they'll be the same thing over and over. So when you begin to go, oh, I have a tendency to put the capo here, I don't, B flat, I'm like, or I just kind of get ruffled. Well, then what you can do, this is one of the other things we used to do when we would put together a set list, is that basically there would be a big block letter with either the first chord or the key that the song was in, such that everybody can kind of go, okay, because sometimes, let's say, for example, you're tuning and all of a sudden, like, somebody starts the click and you're like, my high E string's out of tune. And you're like, and then you can just look down at the chart and just go, got that, right? It makes it, because the other thing that happens is sometimes you just get flustered. And when you get flustered, you lose your bearings and then you just kind of go, we've all had that deer in the headlights moment. So I hope that answers your question. No, we want skill and flair. GB2 will always golden brown and delicious. Look at that. Hey, Deanne, what's going on? Good to see you. Good to see you. All right. Awesome. All right. Facebook. Let's see here. All right. Good. There we go. A little praise for Wesley there. Let's see there. Love your stuff, man. Super helpful. I love that. There we go. So, all right, Matthew. He was the only guitarist for like 5 years. He was able to pretty much do his own thing. Then I show up running all the song and matching tones, and that's just not his thing. That's a coffee date. Alan, when it's just me, I have a tendency to make my own parts. I keep the hook, but the rest is going to be, more laugh out loud. I usually play ambient lead lines instead of swells. Matthew, still again, I will use Hirajoshi instead of relative minor. Plus 2 kind of sound as well. Usually I use more exotic tonality rum. Cool, Matthew. I know that's a typo. I use more exotic tonality rum. I'm like, that is an interesting service there. Run. Okay, hold on a second. All right, so Alan, very cool. I've been experiencing that as well. The ambient lead lines fit well, better than cloud guitar. Cloud guitar. We've invented the cloud guitar. I love it. While staying in the P-dubs realm. There you go. This Gretsch is great. This Gretsch is just absolutely. It's a little out of tune, but it is phenomenal. Okay. Oh boy, we're talking gear now. Wet effects in front of amp or post loop and helix, let's say. I'm usually at wet effects in front of the amp on the edge of breakup, but love the sound of post as well in certain songs. That's a great question. So I have been spending a prolific amount of time working with a bunch of different pieces of gear. Let's see, there we go. So there's the JP2C Petrucci head. And then over there is the Rev head, and then over here is Helix rack. And so I have been experimenting with a bunch of stuff. I'm actually working on a demo. Celestine has a plugin that is called Speaker Mix Pro, and once we're done tonight, I'm going to be back in demo land, and I'm probably going to be shooting until the wee hours of the morning. So we're probably not going to go super late tonight. But what you're going to find is, as we continue down this lovely hang, we're going to become more and more focused, which is great. I love that. As a general rule, and this is an interesting thing because as I've been working with the plugin, I have the opportunity, since it's an IR, and with them it's these new DSRs that they've created. It's in the box, so you have the freedom of using your delays and your reverbs after the speaker, which is not something we traditionally do in your traditional setup. So, to answer your question, when I'm inside HX Edit, there are times that I will place the delays before the amp, but I have a tendency to place the amp models before the delays and the reverbs. And that is not the traditional kind of going in, blasting the front of an end of an AC30. And I've got an AC30 over there. I've got a matchless, I don't know, it's around here somewhere. It's there it is. It's over there. I've got a Benson. I have a bunch of amps that actually desperately need to be played. But the point being is that there's definitely one of the sounds of doing that. The interesting thing is a number of these amps actually do have effects loops. And so, it is a strategic decision. To answer your question, I generally defer when I have the option, other than using an effects loop no, that's not true either. So using 4cm, what I like to do actually is with, so there's a second D20 floating around somewhere back there. I actually really like choosing what preamps I'm going to use and then running into the power amp in on the D20s and basically putting all the soup before that power amp. And then either then with the Two Notes remote software, Two Notes Torpedo remote, then choosing which speaker cabinet I'm going to use. The other thing about the D20s is that you can also go out of the direct out before you capture the power amp, and then you can use virtual power amps. So you can change the power amp set. But the thing that's great about those amps is that the power amp tubes are 6v6s, which is what's in a deluxe, and that's arguably it's the nicest American tube set for as a pedal platform. Just in the same way that the EL84s, in my opinion, are the best quote unquote British style tube set for pedal platform. And so inside there, you can basically choose to use the ones that are inside there, or you can bypass the power amp section as you're going direct out, and then use an EL84, a virtual EL84 power amp, so you can kind of toggle back and forth between the sounds, and it's very cool. It's actually quite awesome. So in that instance, again, I kind of like placing stuff after the amplifier, just because I prefer to use drive pedals or to stack drive pedals. In which case, and the other thing is, I want the amp completely clean. Such that, and then with the compressor, you're always adding a tiny bit of hair with the compressor. Just pushes it just a little bit, but it grabs it at the same time. So you're choosing just to add a little something on there, and then coloring that with drive pedals to taste is kind of my thing. It's a great question. I've been using my HX Stomp MIDI and MC6 to switch between either as I need to. That's crafty. I'll shut off my Big Sky and delay and turn off HX Wet Effects, or vice versa. That's yes, and yes. So anybody, by the way, anybody who starts using the MC6, just one word of caution. It is one of the most phenomenal little boxes, and it's over there. A couple of things, and I stole this off this guy on YouTube, and I don't remember his name, but I'll find it. But basically, it's a MIDI controller there's a lot. The MC6 has 6 buttons, go figure. The MC8 has 8 of them. But basically, what I would suggest doing is, first of all, you might want to have your master patches, like, all right, 4 or 5 patches. But the lower right-hand button, use it as a home button. So let's imagine, you're looking at the lower right here, and then you've got, and on your home, you don't need a home button. So you could go, kind of the bottom 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they're actually A, B, C, D, E, F. But for kind of, preset, if you will, bank 1, preset 1 takes you up to bank 2. Bank 1, preset 2 takes you up to bank 3. Preset 3 takes you up to bank 4. And on each one of those separate banks, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individual presets for each of your different devices. And that allows you to then use the rightmost button as your home button to get back to that first bank, And then you can just bank up to each one of the individual effects banks and always just bank down to that home bank. And that way you can kind of turn individual things on and off with MIDI. And yes, there are times that you just want to map everything to a patch, but that workflow is really crafty. Because in addition to that, you can have something like the GT1000 core, which I've been messing with a bunch, also send MIDI program changes when it changes patches, so all the other stuff changes, and you can still get in using the MC6 and make those individual changes for whatever device you're wanting to mess with, and that's really cool. Generally speaking, with your reverbs, they don't need to be beat synced, so you've got your various flavors of cloud, if you will. Little MIDI there. Okay, I typically like my delays and my reverb in HX after the amp and cab, and split the delay and reverb on different paths. Oh, that's crafty. I take it, Brad, well, all right, we're going to go geeky for a second and talk recording world. One of the things that you can do in recording is you basically set up what's called an auxiliary track. And you basically take a feed off of your main dry signal. You basically take a tap off of that, then you send it to an aux track, and that aux track is where you set up a delay or reverb, that you run that delay or reverb 100% wet. And then as you bring up that fader, you're just adding delay or reverb. So you can do some crafty stuff like that with paths inside Helix or HX Stomp. But I have a feeling you're using a blend, maybe not. But the point being is with HX Stomp, you have a little bit less real estate pathwise. In Helix proper or HX Rack, you can do that. The only bummer about running them separately like that is that when you are running a pure wet mix, when you traditionally run a blended mix of delay and reverb, I like running the delay and the reverb, because the direct signal in the delay path triggers the delay and is still coming through there and triggers the reverb. So you're kind of getting the direct signal triggering delay and triggering reverb kind of simultaneously, and then you're getting the delays also triggering reverb. So you kind of get, if you will, this Christmas tree effect where the direct signal is triggering both delays and reverbs, and the delays are in turn triggering their own reverb of the delays, which is kind of why I generally prefer running them in series with a blend. So, but they both work really well. All right, I'm typically what if we were chasing a lightning in a bottle? I don't know. How's that for an answer? Okay. There we go. Alan, Helix and Pod Go got me putting delay and verb post amp. Never really thought about it that before, but those are sounds that my ears perked up to. That's great. Yes, to keep a blend. There we go. Keep the delay and the reverb from affecting each other. More to keep. Yes, more of a blend to keep the delay or the reverb from affecting each other. Got it. So that way you and again that is a as opposed to that kind of like that thing where the direct signal is triggering the delay, and then the delay and the direct signal are triggering reverb. There are also times where, especially in the studio, you just want pure verb. So yes, and yes. Doug, how do you handle a resisting guitar player who doesn't listen or really doesn't want to try? Hard to have a musical conversation with a bullhorn. That's a leadership thing. So sometimes it is a matter of going up as opposed to over. Sometimes you can kind of do the coffee thing and find like we're on very different pages. Then you go to your leader and just kind of go, how do we solve this? Can we solve this? What does this mean? And I don't have the answer for that conversation, because sometimes we just have to deal with. There are teams where the standard is here, here, and here, and not knowing your team and not knowing where your leader has set the bar, it can be any one of those, and it can vary from, if you will, who's leading that week of what's expected. But ideally, there should be a kind of like, this is what's expected. I think generally it's good to put that stuff in writing so people have, like when they join the team, here's what's expected. And that way when you sit down to somebody, managing expectations is what 99% of leadership is about. When people know what's expected of them and they agree to do it when they come on board, you've created the opportunity to have the conversation of gentle correction. That also affords the opportunity of like, hey, we noticed that, or it's actually better, the we is, and most of the time I like we in that particular instance, hey, I noticed that you're having, because then it's not like everybody else is watching you. It's like, hey, I noticed that you don't seem to be quite as plugged in as you were before. Can we meet for coffee? So they already know what's coming. So then they kind of, it's not as confrontational. And then you're kind of like, hey, so what's up? And the great thing about leadership is when you go, hey, so tell me what's going on. I'm good at talking, but one of the things I learned, so tell me what's going on. And once people understand in a nice, so what's going on, dude? Why don't you tell me? As opposed to like, so, why don't you tell me what's going on? And that's right. I'm not going to say a thing until you answer. And they can say, I really rather not talk about it. It's like, okay. But the point being is you're giving the opportunity, you're creating the opportunity for the person to actually just kind of have to be accountable. And then you also may find out, I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time at work. I'm having a hard time at home. I'm having a hard time at work and at home. And that allows you to have, build relationship, because ultimately all this stuff flows out of relationship. Oh, my bad. So in addition to the sectionals and the get-togethers, all work and no play, barbecues, pizza night. I don't know if you guys are like from Alabama, getting together to watch the game. As long as nobody's from Georgia. Kidding. So the thing is getting people together socially, including the tech teams. Huge, 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 huge. When people spend time together personally, it's the biggest thing ever. It's actually will do more good than the actual sectionals that I was talking about, because people feel knit together. It's a huge thing. I'm sorry I missed that. That I know better. Alan, yeah, I used to lay some reverbs into stomp, and I use stomp to switch between wet in front and wet post. Just depends on the song. You guys are crafty. I think I need a stomp. I love that. Okay, let's see here. Okay, more effects. Let's see here. Okay, I broke a string once and had to play a chord. The bottom three strings on the fly. I love that. No, and that's the thing is like sometimes you're like, I don't have an option but to figure this out, and that's that's there's nothing like learning on the fly. Isn't that right, Deanne? Well done, Brett. Do you ever hook up all or most of your amps at the same time and just play? I wish. No, I should, and I haven't. Stephen, it helps to keep my level very similar or make intentional boosts so I can communicate to whoever's on the desk that weekend. Good. It helps my sound guys know that I value them because I've taken the time to keep their job as easy as I can. Yeah, that's the other thing. It's like levels that are going wacky makes it much more difficult for the sound techs to do their job. And the interesting thing is that, and this is again is why that social hang is so important. The ability to get together, break some bread, kind of find out who people are socially, is really, it's one of the most important things. You guys, U2 is always my my go-to example. When you see those guys actually in a concert setting, you look at them and they go, they got something. There's a bond that comes out onto the stage, and the same thing is true of a worship team that is doing life together. You feel that connection. Young and Free is a great example of that. Their lives are interknit, and that ultimately, it's one of the things. Okay, so of the things that teams can do, and by the way, listening back, this is one of the things that I also used to do every Sunday after I was we were done, and it was when I was leading a team. I'd be like, okay, well, what's one thing that you missed that you could have done better? And I would always start with me. Because the thing is, it's not a matter of finding fault. It's a matter of going, what wasn't good that we can fix? Novel concept, right? It's just like, let's see. I've got a leaky, thing on my door, and every time it rains, my car gets filled with water, and then when the sun shines for 2 days, it smells like mildew. Maybe I should do something about that. Well, guess what? We blow the transition into song 3, because we don't practice the tops and tails. Well, it was like, so, after 4 or 5 weeks in a row going, hey, what is the thing that, that each of us, missed that could do better? Or or just simply what is, if you didn't miss something, what is it that you could have done better? Oh, well, I could have done this. What it enables us to do is have this public conversation in a non-shaming way. It's not me going, you missed that, and you missed that. What it does is it puts people in a position where they can get comfortable with going, like, we all make mistakes. So as the leader, you start with, yeah, I missed this thing. And, but they also see that you're holding yourself to the same standard, because that's the other thing that really burns people, is when they see that their leader is not holding themselves to the same standard. And if that's something that you're going through, that's a coffee date with your leader. Leading up sometimes is a matter of like, hey, can we meet for coffee and just say, look, I'm having a little bit of a hard time with this. Can we talk through this? Because the great thing about leading up is sometimes when it's done with respect and when it's done with a submitted heart, you can just kind of go, hey, this is making it hard for me. And one of the great things about being in leadership is that you're supposed to be humble enough when somebody comes to you that's serving and giving you their time. You have a responsibility to hear them. And leaders don't always hear. I understand that. But they should, because that's part of the roles and responsibilities of being available for your team. Doesn't always turn out that way, but sometimes does. Deanne, we have a team of older and younger musicians, and we love having new members. I totally feel it, and that's awesome. And the great thing about new members is that, one, it's a great opportunity to bring new blood into the team. Number two, it's a great opportunity to create reasonable expectations so people know what to expect and they can have an amazing serving experience. And number three, it also gives some of the people that are rostered all the time a little chance to actually have a little bit of rest and relaxation. Oh, something's going on over here. All right, let's see. All right. How about them dogs? That's funny. Sweat it and get it. Got to make it work. That's leadership. Lead by example. Love it. So, let me just make a last little inventory because we're getting close to the point where I need to jump this evening. So, the looking back on the service is a really great opportunity that a lot of teams miss. It's a great opportunity to, in humility, especially as a leader, go, yeah, I missed this thing. What's great about it is it allows you every week to set, this is what I did. You don't really want to the next week go, yeah, I missed that thing. Yeah, I missed that thing. Yeah, I missed that thing. It allows you to kind of go, I don't want to miss that the next week. And it allows for some personal accountability without having to tell people. It's a lot easier to move people by creating leadership opportunities than coming back around and having to kick people in the pants. But it takes being a little bit strategic at the same time. Team nights. And again, that means mixed tech and worship teams when and where possible. PCO is a really great vehicle. So one of the worst uses of PCO to equip musicians is to provide a YouTube video in the wrong key. It's better, arguably, than nothing. But PCO gives you the ability to pitch tracks and also be able to load the different tracks associated with whoever is the worship leader for that particular given week. And it may sound a little strange to hear the pitch track, but it allows you to practice it in the appropriate key, which is really important. Now, let's say that we want to go all the way out here. For the over-prepared worship guitar player, you could go, all right, well, I have nothing better to do on a, I don't know, Saturday, and I'm going to look for the month ahead. I'm going to look at the songs that are rostered for the weeks that I'm playing. I'm going to rehearse ahead. Now, I can tell you that I have never done that. But if you really, 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 and this is the thing, is that what starts to happen is that I end up kind of doing a rehearsal the night before, or the afternoon of a midweek rehearsal, and then the night before the Sunday service, I'll rehearse late and get up early and rehearse before the run through on the Sunday. But arguably, if I kind of looked at the month ahead and went, all right, let me take a look at all the songs that I'm going to be rostered on dates, and I actually started rehearsing ahead, chances are when I came back to those songs for the midweek rehearsal or for the Saturday night or the Sunday morning kind of rehearsal that I do on my own, I would already have, all right, it's this song, this key, right? I already did this. I already have my notes. I already kind of know it's like boom, and then it's a lot easier. In the busyness of life, that is not always practical for people, but it is worth noting that that's one of the approaches you could take. And it is certainly a good approach to take when there's a new song and you go, wow, there's a new song. I'm playing it 2 times this month with a male worship leader and a female worship leader. Might not be a good, might not be a bad idea to take those run through the 2 different keys in advance, just kind of get used to like, oh, I'm going to have to do this. Oh, there's this melody line. Oh, I need to think about this, such that you kind of are able to kind of have some strategies in mind for how you approach it. Because what's neat about it is that as opposed to going from the one key, that's passed, and going to the other, when you're practicing it for those 2 keys, you're going to begin to compare and contrast and go, all right, what stuff stays, what stuff doesn't, what works for both, what doesn't work for both, what's my strategy here? And you begin to look at the chords. Quite often, the root, if you're going to play the root on the 6th or the 5th string root, it'll flip around maybe in kind of the 3rd through the 10th frets. And you begin to see the box shapes of what you might do, or if you're kind of doing, these wider voiced chords. Just the different things that you might do to be able to embellish it. Maybe, you're going to play voicings of triads that are 1, 3, 5 on the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings, and then you're going to play them 5, 1, 3. That is to say, uninverted, and then, first inverted. That is to say, if I'm taking a G major triad, I'm in the key of G, G, B, D, and then we're in the key of C, I'm going to go G, C, E. And so that enables me to have, a strategic way to think about how I'm going to approach playing the chords and kind of go, okay, I want to be in this particular register. So now what am I going to have, what chord voicing am I going to use there? And that means that you want to know your chord voicings. That is to say, your triads voiced 1, 3, 5. Your triads voiced 3, 5, 1, and your triads voiced 5, 1, 3. And then be able to map those up the neck diatonically for different keys. And that's going to really, 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 really help you out. But that just takes a little bit of strategy. So that is one of the things that I'm going to make a mental note that we're going to be also covering is making sense of chord inversions. So some ear training for guitar players, some chord inversions. So, look, inversions is a scary sounding word, honestly. If you don't know what an inversion is, it's scary. But here's the deal, is if you take a little D major chord and you hit the 4th through 1st string, that's D major. If you hit the open 5th string as well, that's D over A. That is a D major. The notes of a D major chord are D, F sharp, and A. That D with the open A string is a D in 2nd inversion. Because basically if there's 3 notes, D, F sharp, and A, and you have that A in the bass, there's regular D in the bass. Then when you put the F sharp in the bass, like as in a D over F sharp, that's D in 1st inversion. I'm not pointing that at you. Then we put the D, F sharp, A. That's the 2nd inversion. So again, instead of having the D in the bass, when you have the F sharp, that's the 1st inversion. Because it's kind of like, instead of having the bass note in the root in the bass, you now have the next available note, D, F sharp, A. So F sharp is the first inversion. A is the second inversion. So this little D guy here, there's F sharp in the bass there with the thumb there, or however you might go about playing that, that is D over F sharp. And they're not that scary. You're really just kind of generally taking notes that are already in the chord and just playing them as the lowest note in the chord. That was easy. All right, we're done with inversions. Okay, let's see. Oh, Alan, with great pleasure. Oh, awesome. Woohoo! Thank you, Alan. You made my night. Guys, thank you all, especially Doug and Bruce, for hosting us. I'm learning so much here. Thanks to all your heart and input here. With pleasure. And by the way, we do take requests. So, like, whether it's triads, inversions, scales, tricks for learning songs, or anything, we're here to serve. That is the goal. All right, Lonnie, out of curiosity, how many teams out there have rolled back to 1 or 2 because of state restrictions? That's a great question. Deanne, I always relied on other guitarists till God said he wouldn't be there forever, so I picked up my game. I love that. That is. There you go. So sometimes God is just like, hey, up that game. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there we go. You take first. Play some Yngwie. We'll do some Yngwie on another evening. All right, we're going to close out in some prayer, but before we do, I just want to say, how much of a privilege this is, and how much we value the opportunity. What's neat is we have this little community that's hanging out here, like a community of worship guitar players. How cool is that? And so my goal is to continue to find ways to make this an ever-enriching experience. So I spent a lot of time thinking about it while I was in Alabama. I'm a little bit busier than I would like, but that's just the season. But know that the plans that I have for what we're going to do together, I'm really excited about what we will have a chance to talk about. And the idea is that in theory, it's helping anybody here that's got, some questions, and we can hopefully kind of, again, with the ear training thing, round out what it is that, in addition to is already happening with your team. Ear training for guitar players is not one of the things worship teams are traditionally covering, but it's certainly a huge help. And it will certainly be a huge help in you being more effective on the instrument. And then also knowing what's going on with the triads and being able to see honestly how straightforward that is, and providing some resources for you to be able to do that. It's all on the agenda and the horizon. And I don't always like using the word agenda because it always sounds like there's some agenda. The agenda is to actually help equip you. That's the mission of Worship Musician Magazine. And we have a new issue that's just getting ready to launch. Tommy Prophet on the cover, and lots of great stuff. So with that said, let's close out in prayer. Lord, I just give thanks. It's been a strange year. I think the church is going to come out stronger because of it. But people have felt challenged on a lot of fronts. So Lord, I just pray a spirit of unity. I think it's something that, like practice, there are things that we have to do consciously to achieve it, and we have to want it badly enough to do the exercise to build the unity muscles. And Lord, I know that you want unity. You're clear about that. So Lord, I just pray that each of us is inspired to find a little bit more unity in our lives with our families and with people that we encounter when we're out and about, if we're out and about, or even online. Lord, I just pray that we are peace keepers and peacemakers, Lord. I know that you would want that for us. I know that you would want us to find and build bridges. People are just so torn apart, Lord. I think this is an opportunity for the church to reach people like we haven't had in a long time. And I just pray that we don't miss this opportunity to soften our hearts, make ourselves available to people that really need us, and even some people that don't. But let them know that we are here, we are the church, we are the hands and feet of Jesus, and we have a mission to serve people. It's not serving people, just people that we like or just people that we love, but to serve people and to serve you, Lord. So I pray that as we continue to endeavor on with the things that we're doing here, Lord, I just pray that it would be a pleasing offering. I would pray that the things that you would want me to teach on and that you would want us to focus on, Lord, I just pray that I am present enough to hear from you and humble enough to know to take your lead and not try and do things in my own strength. So, Lord, I just give thanks to everybody. I love this little community here, Lord. This is such a gift. And I just pray that each of us has a blessed week. And if anybody's hurting, Lord, I just pray that you just give them extra comfort. And I just pray that we can shelter one another as you shelter us. We ask all these things in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Oh, boy. That's always so good. All right. Well, thank you so much. I will see you guys next Tuesday. Thank you so much for hanging out. Much love. We've got a new issue of Worship Musician that'll be going online tomorrow at worshipmusician.com. And just as always, thank you so much. And love you guys. God bless.